Hello, Professor. The final component of my program that I wanted to touch on was my game manager. This is where I went a little bit off. I don't know if I went off track or I didn't use the scene system incorporated in Teal. Instead, I tried to do it myself through the game manager. I um, I learned a lot of stuff doing this, but I don't think it was either I'm ready for it or it was just something that was more complicated than it should have been. But the way I did this was the first scene. All it really does is when it goes in and initializes all the collision pairs, and it just calls initialize on the game manager. Um, Initialize on the game manager um, goes in and starts the um, attractor mode. So it goes starts attractor mode in the player manager, which I covered in an earlier video. Um, it spawns a whole centipede. It spawns the mushrooms, spawns the fleas, spawns the spiders, um, and that and by spawning those, it refers to the spawner wave system that I don't have fully implemented, um, but it goes from there. So this continues to run, um, and it just does its thing, and then here on the update cycle, because the player manager is a game object, on the update cycle, if a 1 or a 2 is hit, that's when it activates the player. So um, player 1, when it's hit, goes to the player manager, start game, which I talked about a little while earlier. Um, and this goes and checks um, passes in a player 1 or a player 2 enum, and so in that case, it destroys the current player, gets rid of all the stuff associated with the attractor mode, changes the current game mode to one player, and then it calls the game manager back and says, well, here let's transition from attractor. So that goes in. It adds player one from the player manager, which goes in, creates player one, uh, increases the number of players, sets the controller, sets the sound mode, and then it goes to the HUD manager, initializes player one, and then from there it spawns all the critters. This is where you play, and then when a player dies, it reports the player death, it checks the current game node. So this is for player one. Within here, it uh, clears all the active centipedes, um, clears active spiders. It should clear all the critters. It pauses the controller so you can't do stuff while it figures out what's going on, and then it checks for next life. Here it goes and checks if it's 0 lives, which then it goes to game over. Otherwise, it just goes um, and regenerates mushrooms. And if it's not the end of your turn or end of lives, it creates a new ship, and then it goes back and it continues on, and you get to play again. Um, and then if it is game over, it resets it here to attractor mode. So if it's game over and it's player one, goes back to attractor mode. If it's attractor mode, it goes back to attractor mode. Pretty straightforward. Um, so this was my logic when I was trying to create I guess my own game loop. I I started doing this a couple like 2 weeks ago, I think, and I don't know if it was the right idea or it started out as a little bit of a different idea. I just wanted to make sure everything was on track with each other when I started trying to implement the attractor mode, and this is what I came up with. Um, it, I should have gone with the scenes, but this was what I came up with for the game itself. Um, I would like some feedback on this if you have the opportunity. But just so I wanted to walk you through how the game loop kind of operated and my thought process behind it. Um, Once again, I would appreciate any feedback. But this is it. Besides I'm gonna do some go through the coding examples line by line and just make sure I briefly touch on each of those. But other than that, thank you so much and have a wonderful time.